Being a chartered manager means that you are a specialist in that area, and it means you've got all the skill to do the job to the best of its ability.
You are seen as a leader, a true leader who has credentials behind the great work you've already been doing.
It's enhanced my understanding, it's enhanced my skill set, it's improved my mindset.
It makes all the difference.
This session is recorded and will be available on the CMI website and YouTube channel. Join the conversation by using the live chat box for your questions and comments. We'll answer as many as we can during the Q&A.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the AI Change Management Leading Confidently Through Transformation digital event. My name is Amelia, and I'm an event delivery coordinator at CMI. Don't forget to join the conversation by using the live chat box, and feel free to ask any questions you have for our speakers, and we'll answer as many as possible during the Q&A. I'll now hand over to Caroline and Renee from the CMI Scotland board to begin today's event.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm Caroline Wiley from CMI Scotland, and this is my colleague Renee Raper, who is our chair. I'm delighted to be hosting today's session on AI change management, leading confidently through transformation. AI is moving fast from experimentation to everyday business reality. But while technology is accelerating, many leaders are still working out what it really means in practice. And that's what today is about. Recent research published by CMI highlighted that 84% of AI implementation failures were down to poor leadership. So this isn't a session about hype or tools, it's about leadership, how we make decisions, manage risk, and bring people with us through change that can feel complex and uncertain. Because AI isn't just a technology shift, it's a leadership challenge. We know lots of questions have been coming in, and there's an opportunity to add yours here as well. We'll try to get through as many as we can. I'm joined by a fantastic panel. Derek McCanley from Scottish Enterprise, working at the forefront of AI transformation across Scottish businesses. Professor Namali Wiratunga from Robert Gordon University, bringing deep expertise in AI systems, explainability and responsible implementation. And Sarah Frame from the Challenges Group, also my place of work. Sarah supports early stage impact ventures and helps them and their organisation adopt AI in practical and purpose-driven ways. Together, they'll share real-world insights on what's working and what leaders need to do differently. So let's get started. So just first of all, with the panel, I've got one question just to kick us off. In one sentence, can you tell me what is your current focus when it comes to AI? Derek, would you like to kick us off?
Sure, thanks, Caroline. Good to be in your company and good to be in the virtual company of everyone on the call today. So my kind of area of focus at this moment in time is continuing to support businesses and the leaders within those businesses in AI adoption, trying to move companies through the maturity curve to scale AI from experimentation into real productivity and real return on investment in a way that brings workforces with them on that journey and builds long-term capability and results.
Thank you. Thanks, Derek. And Namali, what's your current focus?
Hi, Caroline. I'm an academic working in AI and research, and so currently we are looking at how to bring in reasoning in high-stake applications like health particularly, and how to use generative AI in a responsible manner in those types of applications.
Thanks very much. And Sarah?
I work on two sides. I work with ventures directly, and I'm working with them on a lot of analysis tools using AI to help them identify areas in the business that they could be using AI in. And I'm also looking at how I work and share and support the ideas and tools within the Challenges group that I work in.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Sarah. So turning to you, Derek, and your work across Scottish businesses, how real is AI adoption right now, and where are organisations generally making progress?
Yeah, I think it's as real as we make it, and that's quite an uneven picture across Scotland and across Scottish businesses at this moment in time. So it's very real in the sense that it's probably, if not definitely, the number one topic I hear companies talking about, I hear leaders talking about at the boardroom level, at different management levels as well, asking questions about how they experiment with it, how they turn that into tangible ROI as well. It dominates things on LinkedIn, on business podcasts, so it's very real in the sense of there's a lot of kind of talk around it. But in terms of people seeing real AI adoption within Scottish businesses, as I said, it's quite an uneven picture. We're seeing that adoption is getting more and more widespread, but it can quite often be quite shallow and still rooted in kind of experimentation. But we are seeing a lot of kind of pockets of real progress, particularly where leaders are personally engaged in what's happening within their business. And we know still quite early on for a lot of organisations, and we're seeing that kind of execution's lagging a bit behind the levels of curiosity and ambitions people have. But we're certainly seeing a lot of enthusiasm for leaders, and what we're trying to do is work with leaders to translate that from ambition and enthusiasm into disciplined execution to make sure that we're doing things that help companies on achieving productivity, innovation, and realise actual benefits that bring workforces in the journey with them on that. So we're definitely seeing some tangible progress. We've still got a way to go, but it's not always needing to be the frontier of these things as well. It's about controlling the pace that's right for your organisation, for your teams, your culture, your data, etc. But trying to kind of root that into define goals and outcomes.
Brilliant, thank you. And just looking at readiness, where are organisations typically least prepared in relation to data, systems, skills, or culture?
Yeah, well, I suppose the good news on this is that there's not many companies far down that journey. We're still seeing quite a lot of companies on the first rung of the ladder. I know there was a kind of Ernst & Young report back in February about Scottish businesses saying that around half of them rate their AI and data literacy as being quite moderate to low. And I think with businesses we've worked with in Scotland for a while, the digital maturity in Scotland can be quite low compared to our European countries in comparison. So we are kind of maybe starting from a kind of low position on that. But I suppose in our work in the last few years, we've found that businesses are aware of the theory and maybe struggle to translate that into actual outcomes in their business. So one of the programs we've run for the last couple of years in Scottish Enterprise is it's actually titled AI Readiness, because it's not just about launching straight into an AI tool and layering that into your processes, your business that stands at the moment. There's quite a bit involved in making sure your organisation is ready for AI, and that might be around data structure and quality. That might be around culture, skills, and leadership. So there's quite a bit that goes into doing a lot of things before you launch into AI itself. And there's a lot of kind of technical things we see companies that they say aren't quite ready yet. There's quite a bit around making sure you've got a good AI policy, so making it clear to employees what they can use AI for, what they can't use, what tools are available to them, using AI to make sure that we kind of address kind of poor knowledge management. So we're finding there's a lot of things that companies have in their workforces and people's heads, but not necessarily documented in a way that's kind of shareable, that AI can kind of get hold of and be trained on. And I say there's a kind of low data literacy within leaders as well as in workforces as well. We're seeing as kind of typical barriers on things. So it goes beyond that kind of technical, and we're absolutely kind of seeing that the people side is equally as important. And we're needing to make sure that leaders have buy-in to what's happening, making sure they've got a level of understanding as to how AI can help achieve business goals, and making sure that the culture of the organisation doesn't kind of shy away from this as well, addressing things like the legitimate fears that people have over maybe job replacement, threat to skills, threat to roles. And what we're seeing is actually that AI, yes, it can replace tasks, but we're hoping it doesn't necessarily replace jobs as well. So we need to make sure that we're being transparent with people when we're bringing AI into businesses, to make sure first and foremost it's clear that AI can help augment people's skills and make real use of that kind of domain knowledge expertise, and making sure that kind of fear is overcome so that workers don't sabotage or derail AI efforts that the companies have to make sure they achieve real benefits.
Great, thank you. Really interesting. So some organisations, and you've touched on this already, talk about AI strategy, but struggle a bit with execution. So what separates those that make progress from those that stall?
We see that the organisations that make the most progress start with the real business problems. So don't start with AI in mind, start with what is it you're trying to achieve in mind. And that should be aligned to what your strategy is currently, what your operating plans are currently. So it's not just about deploying the technology or deploying the software. What we're also seeing is that a number of companies will, bring in AI tools and license to the business and effectively allow employees to go and experiment and to use that, which is absolutely fine to go do it. But what we're finding is companies that need to make sure they're not confusing personal effectiveness with gains in organisational productivity. So we might have something in our organisation where it means that I save 5 hours a week doing emails and PowerPoints and all the other various kind of things that we do. Then it's about, well, what does that mean in terms of gaining for the organisation? So how do you turn that into organisational productivity? How do we use that freed up human capacity that AI is going to bring to actually deliver more value for the organisation in the terms that make sense to them? So it's very much about helping control the cadence of how people adopt AI within a business, and making sure there's a kind of safe space for people to experiment. So you want that kind of psychological safety within your teams to make sure that they're doing things that, yep, a little bit new and a little bit different, but not to be scared about that as well. So that's quite key, is what we're seeing as well. But it is quite uneven. You know, some people are embracing it quite quickly. You know, certainly if you're working a digital native as such, it might be something you go and embrace, but you need to make sure organisations aren't leaving others behind on that. And as I say, one of the key things we repeat quite often is around ROI. So how do you know you're actually achieving something? So it's defining that up front, and again, root that in business goals. And one of the things that we kind of talk about is making sure that you don't just free up human capacity for cappuccino time. So this kind of thing around, you know, more time to go make coffees or go walk the dog and all the rest of it. It's going to be creating capacity to go and scale up the business to do something a bit more valuable as well, not just freeing up people.
Brilliant, thank you. And what would you say has been the hardest leadership challenge you've seen when organisations try to adopt AI?
Yep, so I referenced earlier, there's a EY survey back in February that found that only 1 in 5 Scottish leaders feel they understand the AI needs of themselves and their organisations. So the hardest kind of leadership challenges around this is maybe not knowing enough to set the vision and direction, to empower the organisation to adopt AI to realise those kind of benefits, to maybe not be kind of confident on how do you bring a workforce with you on a change journey. You know, having that vision, having the transparency around the change. How do you make sure you have the right training in place for employees? How do you even look at core things like, well, if we're bringing in AI, how do we go back to job redesign? How do we make sure we've got the right job design for the people who are doing the role to make the best use of the human talent we've got? And there's also things around addressing trust gaps. So we've heard all the stories around hallucinations of AI, which are very, very real. There's things around, well, how do we use AI to complement our own skills, and how do we trust and do that? How do we verify and validate that as well? So these are all the kind of things we're seeing kind of leaders having to face up to. But the main thing, as I said, it's about a leader in an organisation understanding what is the right pace for their organisation, for their teams. And I say it's not always needing to be on the frontier of that. It's what's right for you, because if you turn too quickly, you know, you might kind of break something. So again, it's about understanding your own skills and culture to do that. Some of the kind of common leadership traps we're kind of finding is maybe not having the ambition and plans for redeploying that freed up capacity that we're seeing with some of the automated tasks that can be done by AI. Talking about how efficiency can lead to better quality work for individuals as well. So what's the benefit to individuals of using AI to augment what they do, to maybe address some of the kind of pain points as well. And I think as well about laying out the vision for workers on how they can use AI to enhance what they are doing. So we talk about quite often this kind of 20-60-20 approach, where the first 20% of a task should be you as a human with your skills and your knowledge going and doing something. 60% can be the heavy lifting used by AI to help you go through ideas, go through the task itself. Then that last 20% is absolutely go back to the human to understand, to validate, to use your expert knowledge to go and deliver the kind of completion of any kind of task.
Brilliant, thank you. Really useful stuff there. Thanks very much. So turning to Nimali from a research perspective. Nimali, hopefully you can join me on screen. Fabulous. And so what do you think leaders most misunderstand about how AI works, and why does that matter?
I think one of the misunderstandings is to accept that the confident responses that are being generated by AI to be factually correct, because they are not. And the reason for that is you can understand that by understanding how this, for example, LLMs works, because what they're doing is predicting the next word or the token in a sequence based on patterns it has learned previously from large amounts of data, usually the World Wide Web, which we can think of as the digital footprint of the sort of the Western world, let's say. So it is very much probabilistic in its generation rather than an exact match. So that's why it looks very fluent and confident, but it is actually generating things that can be very creative and not very precise. So if we compare, for example, technologies like databases, for example, traditional technologies, you put in a SQL and you always get an exact response or records retrieved. Similarly, if you go to Google and you put a query, okay, it will do a non-exact match, but the documents that it retrieves are precise and accurate, and they actually exist. But this is obviously different with an LLM. You put a prompt, it's better to think of it as an approximate retrieval because of that probabilistic nature. If there are gaps that it doesn't know, it will probabilistically fill that in. And sometimes those fillings are correct and sometimes they are not correct. And that's where you have things like hallucinations, or what they call confabulations, which is a word that comes from psychology about how memory also can sometimes fit in gaps with things that are most probable or most likely. The other misunderstanding is to think that these systems are, or LLMs, let's say, are equally good at a variety of different topics. And that's not true either, because they have this thing called a jagged intelligence. They're extremely good at some things because when they were training, they have been trained on that area, but they can be terrible on other things. So for certain reasoning tasks, they can be terrible, and because they're confident, they seem to say things as if it is correct. So that is another misunderstanding. So when we have things like jagged intelligence, what we need to then be looking at is, okay, if I'm integrating it into one of my systems in a company or something, it may not know about that particular application domain. Therefore, I might need to do things like fine-tuning or retrieval augmented generation, or look at other methods to try and fill those areas of jaggedness. And I suppose the next thing, maybe a misunderstanding or a lack of understanding, is that these systems are really poor at memory, in the sense we talk about long horizon interactions. It simply does not remember things from the past. It is simply completing your prompt. So understanding this is important so as to not be surprised when previously worked problems need to be reworked again from scratch, or previously already mentioned things or facts are ignored in more recent responses, which sort of looks a bit strange. Yeah, so I would say those are some of the things to be aware of.
Thank you so much. And then just looking at explainability, how important do you think that is to organizations using AI? And what are the risks if leaders don't prioritize it?
I think explanations and in general transparency is very, very important because it helps to identify potential errors. Also important because it helps you to identify biases. I think the difficulty is to be aware that when we talk about explanations, there are a whole plethora of different types of explanations, and also knowing what is the right explanation for a given particular user query. And to understand, because when people ask for explanations, they could be asking explanations about the input, could be about the model, it could be the output. And so understanding that is very important to be able to use explanations correctly as well. So for example, if you take things like counterfactual explanations, these are really good at identifying bias, and whether the bias is gender, race, age, or whatever, because these types of explanations use what we call contrastive suggestions, so that as you ask questions, for example, let's say you're asking about a failed application for a loan, it is able to explain to you what other things you should have done in order to achieve a more desirable output. So contrasting what you have. So depending on the situation, you need to use the right explanation. The other thing about explanations is that we must not assume that a single type of explanation will fit all problems and all users. And as users or end users are given an explanation, their mental model and understanding of the AI changes. Therefore, they might have different explanation questions. And so explanation is almost like an experience. It goes from one to the other. And how you design the explanation strategy also becomes a very important thing. But I also like to a little bit to touch on the issues of the challenges for explanation. So when we talk about what we have used to have deep learning, we have explanation techniques that we can use because they have what we call a verifiable trace. You can go into the neural net and try and figure out how it worked and give some explanations. But the problem with LLMs, though they may share natural language with us, and they have been trained on this large amount of data, which seem to say they have a similar mental model to us. But the problem is that the explanations they provide you, there's no guarantee these are correct or even representative of what actually happened inside those systems. So, in fact, recent research is well aware of this, that explanations can lead to false trust. You falsely trust it if you ask for an explanation. So the techniques that they're looking at is instead, we need to build what is called calibrated trust, which is know when to trust, when not to trust. And some of the techniques are looking at things like providing 2 prompts separately, one to generate an explanation that confirms the response that was given by, let's say, an LLM, and another prompt to critique that. So studies are showing that when you put these types of parallel prompts, users are less likely to be trusting it blindly, and it sort of helps to build this what we call calibrated trust. So just to summarize it, I think explanations are very, very important, and it is closely linked to the role of the user and the machine and the trust, and where we want to get to with that.
Thanks, Nirmali, and I'll be bearing that in mind the next time I use ChatGPT or Claude. So just on looking at governance, so what would you say good governance of AI looks like?
Right, so governance is actually harder now. It is getting not easier, very, very much harder. I think the way to start that is to think that the AI tools that we are using today are probably the worst AI tools we will ever use. Why? Because it's improving all the time. So like if you think about 15 years ago, we had these predictive models. Then we moved to generative AI. 2017 started these transformers, LLMs, and so on. But now we're moving to agentic AI, which is a huge different problem. So when we think about predictive models, as I mentioned earlier, we can ask things like, is the model accurate? Is the data fair? Is it explainable? And we have solutions for that. Generative AI, to some extent, because it's hallucinating, it becomes harder, but still there are guardrails that are being put in place to try and address some of those issues. Now, if you look at agentic AI, this is hard because the number of agents that are involved in the workflow is becoming bigger and autonomous. And so when we ask, if you think about the types of questions we are going to ask, it's very difficult to address them. So we need to think about what applications are we currently using, what is the AI or the agents allowed to do, what data can they access, what data can they write, who is approving these actions, what happens if the workflow goes through and you want to retract it. Can you do that quickly? Because governance needs to cover all those, but as you can see, it is not very, very easy. The reason also is human oversight is almost difficult now, because if you have so many agents, one after the other, how do you check the output of each of these agents' outputs? Maybe you have to test them separately in boxes and then integrate them or something like that. But I guess what I'm trying to say is it's getting harder. So anyway, one way to help with governance is to educate ourselves a little bit about some of the regulations that are ongoing. So the EU AI Act is probably a good place for us to start, because it was one of the first regulations that sort of tried to formalize this. So they talk about the different levels of risk Currently, it's quite straightforward. They have unacceptable risk, high risk, limited risk, and minimal risk. So unacceptable means you simply cannot do it. So things like, social scoring or manipulative AI, these things are not possible. It's prohibited. High risk is more like to do with any AI that you might use in public services, like health, border control, legal, finance systems. These are high risk. And so they have much more obligations now about how they do their risk management, their data governance, the amount of documentation that are needed, and, a lot of logging, tracing everything that's happening is becoming very important. Actually, the AI Act is supposed to come into place properly of August this year, but there is indications that it might get pushed because since they launched it last year around October, November, I think again agentic AI has come in, and I don't think that all of that has been taken into account in the regulation. So there's a chance it might get pushed a little bit. What's also interesting about the EU AI Act is they, apart from risks, they also try to categorize things like the roles that people have. So it's not simply the people who create the AI, the developers, it's also people who will use them and then deploy them. So essentially, what the EU AI Act distinguishes is between these different actors, developers, the importers. If you're bringing it into the EU, then you must follow these regulations. It means you have to bring in a lot of documentation to provide the evidence. So they also, although not mentioned in the EU AI Act, there's another particular standard which is often mentioned by companies who are doing AI, which is the ISO 42001 AI certification. I think I have personally not used it, but I know companies that have. It essentially lays out a full template of all the documentation that you need to follow in order to ensure that you've gone through all your governance processes. So I think aligning ourselves a little bit more to these regulations is probably good, because when governance weakens or is not possible to put in place, it increases the trust gap between us and AI, and that also could be some of the reasons people are talking about the AI bubble bursting and so on. Mm-hmm. It becomes harder. So yeah.
Great, thanks so much, Nirmali, for that input. So turning to Sarah, we've heard about the strategic and technical challenges, a little bit about them. Let's bring this into day-to-day reality of an organisation that's actually trying to implement AI. So Sarah, from your perspective, what are you seeing from founders and early stage teams? Are they approaching AI strategically or reacting to pressure?
Okay, so I think I should start by saying I work with a wide range of ventures, some in environment sector, agri-tech, food security, etc. But actually, when fundamentally it comes down to those which would class themselves as an AI business and those which are not an AI business, still totally understandably, the ones that are an AI business, and with our ventures, that is youth employability app, that could be AI funding app, it can be an environmental satellite scanning our oceans, and they're all very much, their world has always been machine learning and AI, and they are reacting to pressure. So they very much are now, where they had a very unique skill set, which was very different from the rest of us, they are now absolutely looking over their shoulder, feeling like they're in a race, who is coming up behind them. And it's not necessarily people with skills, it is people who think they have skills. It's somebody who could be the next door neighbour who is trying to do a bit of vibe coding on the side, sat through a couple of hours of Claude co-work, sat through, a bit of Notebook LM, and now thinks they suddenly know how to make apps. And so they are feeling the pressure, because whatever they're trying to put out into the world, they're now wanting to do it faster. The non-AI ventures, I would say, as a general whole, are loving it. They're liking what it can bring to their skill set, and also just the most commonly one used are marketing, that they're heavily using for marketing, sort of graphic design. They now feel like they've got a business consultant in their pocket. They're all making friends with their own chat GPTs. They've all got their own names. And so I think it's helping the non-AI businesses, but it's putting pressure on the AI businesses. And do any of them have an AI governance policy and committee? I would say most of them, if not all, don't. I would say it's not that we're reacting. We're not one step ahead.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So for organisations who feel unsure how to progress, what are the practical steps that you would recommend?
I think seeing as all of us in this lifetime that we happen to be living in are all going on this journey together, there's not really anybody for us to follow, like a proper system to follow. So the only thing that I can sort of speak on is what we've done within the Ventures Lab and within the Challenges group. And I think the way I've felt the leaders have been sort of tackling it has been, I've been really been embracing AI and honest and open about it from day one. The practical things we have done, though, end of last year we had our team building day, and we incorporated AI into that. It came out in conversations through the day, and it really was a case of practical learning, all of us sitting with a laptop doing a walkthrough together on an AI sort of scenario that we've simulated, and then discussing it. And that's when the true learning comes out, because that's when people come out about imposter syndrome. Is this cheating? Is this is this ethical? It's all the big questions. And we were all deliberating that sort of last December. I think we're deliberating even more today, to be honest. But that's how it all started. That then spun out to our learning and development team, bringing out our staff survey. The staff survey just captured a few bullet points of where we were at. The takeaways from that, then what where the people felt they were weakest in or whatever, that then made a sort of a syllabus for our monthly team training that we do internationally within the Challenges group. We've had little lunch and learn sessions, so that's more informal. That works really well within the Scottish team in particular. We have a small AI working group, and that's a few of us across the organisation, all in completely different roles. I personally, on a personal level, if I'm honest, I feel like I'm going as an AI counselling session. I get a lot of support in this group because it's evolving so much. And you think you're one step ahead, you try and write a policy, and then the next day it's changed. You recommend a one platform to a colleague, and then the next week it's changed. You think, actually, no, you'd be better doing that. You'd be Notebook LM for that, Perplexity for that, co-work for that, whatever. And this is constantly happening. We're not getting any sort of consistency on the platforms. The AI working group, one of the best ideas that came out of that was, how do we train people on this? We're all at different levels. Everybody's absolutely, working their wee socks off in their own job roles. They know their to-do list are already saturated. How do we integrate it? And the simplest integration actually was setting up a Teams chat. So we in our organisation use Microsoft Teams. Other organisations, I'm sure, are using Slack, WhatsApp, depends on the size of your organisation, what you're allowed to use, etc. But whatever those internal chat conversations are, we set one up called Cool. So we tried to make it sound engaging rather than boring. So we called it Cool and Legal Ways to Use AI. And that's just the name of the chat. So if I come up with anything, if colleagues spot a great article somewhere, if somebody sees something else, we post it in the Teams chat, and it's just part of our day. It's just one of the things that we read about, and you just subliminally learn from your colleagues. And AI absolutely we talk about it a lot in team meetings. It's just one of the simplest things to do. It just add it onto your team meeting agenda, whatever the team meeting is. And often what's come out of that is templates that we have made, or little workbooks or sheets that we've made. We share best practice examples and just discuss that. We share that we share templates with each other. And I think it's been touched on already, but all of our skill levels are very different with AI. Some people are absolute technophobes, some people are absolutely loving it. This difference, it's really hard for learning development teams to create one training sort of that one size fits all. It doesn't, we're finding that just doesn't work. It's just not tailored correctly. So what we're about to pilot is just informal drop-in sessions, and we'll see, so we can tackle more real-time challenges that people are having and maybe come up with great solutions.
Great, thank you. And you've talked about this a little bit already, but how do you introduce AI into teams without creating fear and resistance?
So for me, fear, this is why we to answer this question, is fear is a human emotion, right? So it's humans at the core of this for me. There's the practical fears. So you actually, we all, we know our teams well, and we know people who really like technology and embrace it, and it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a CRM, Salesforce, HubSpot, whatever, Microsoft 365, SharePoint, all these things have lovely challenges with them, and they were an issue in themselves, never mind this whole beast that is AI. So there is the technical, I think, just like AI is going fast, the training is coming fast too. I'm getting some brilliant webinar links in the Scottish ecosystem that are phenomenal, that are really good. So the training, the practical tools are there. For me, the human side of it is I have colleagues who are worried about their over-reliance on it, and that they're going to lose their skills. That then, I suppose, leads into the next step. If we lose our skills, do we then ultimately put ourselves out of a job because the AI does it better? So there's the fear around that. My work around this is actually not so much on the fear of losing the jobs so much, because it's the core skills. So if I make a brilliant custom GPT or a bot or live artifact in Claude Cowork today, and I know the inner workings of it, and pass that on to colleagues, and they just use it, but they don't know the inner workings of it, that is a massive loss of learning. That's what would normally be an opportunity to pass on learning. Now it's just done at the click of a button. There's no need to memorize how to do it. There's no need to sort of understand to do it. And that's a massive, massive risk. The way I've been doing it and encouraging colleagues to do it is basically on everything we try to document is we make workbooks of it. So instead of, can you make me a strategy plan? Can you make me a Gantt chart? Can you make me an email? We sort of ask the AI back and say, listen, that document you created is really good. Can you now give me, make me a workbook version that I can do in person on my own? And it's basically like good old-fashioned workbooks, and it leaves boxes blank. And I now have the work through, so I can pick that document up in 6 months' time, 6 years' time, when the AI is all burst or the internet is collapsed, and I can still do my job and understand my logical processes and thinking of what I was doing on just simple day-to-day tasks that we might lose, a bit like forgetting our phone numbers and forgetting people's postcodes and addresses. And one of the other bits on your question was about resistance. Right? Now, I think this is a bigger thing. We haven't covered it this morning so far. Resistance for me is not about people losing their jobs. It's whether they're doing a good thing in their jobs. And this is much more philosophical, and this is the way my mind works. What we're doing on a daily basis matter, or if it matters. So if an employee is doing a good job, and they can now do it 5-10 times better or faster than what they were yesterday, are they happy? Are they happy doing that? Is their organisation that they are fundamentally working for going in a positive direction? Is it a good thing that the employee is doing things 5-10 times better? And I think this comes down to a bigger piece of sort of work, that if people are not sharing their good ideas with their organisation or to how templates and workbooks, like I've mentioned.
Mhm.
There may be a reason they're worried that they're sharing it, because they're maybe not necessarily what they're wanting to do is not positive for the world as a whole. I think the media have a bit to play in that, because they're blaming things on AI. And touch on this very quickly is we do see a lot of press about people losing jobs or worried about losing jobs to AI, and unfortunately, that probably is is fact. But actually, in the privileged role I'm in, I get to see right under the hood under ventures, and there are many reasons why businesses struggle, and unfortunately sometimes fail. And those reasons are nothing to do with AI. They are to do with, people not having money. They are, systems issues, environmental. There's so many reasons why a business could be struggling. And the message is going out is if businesses, if that is the case and businesses use AI as a way out to say, like, this is a reason our business isn't doing well, it's AI that is the reason why we've had to lay off a lot of workers. And actually, they didn't look deep enough. The AI was never the issue. There was basic fundamental issues at the problem there at the core of it. That's what I think. It's just, if there's resistance, it's just signalling that there's maybe deeper concerns that are worth diving into before blaming AI.
Really interesting, and we'll pick up on more of that when we get back to work. But thank you very much for your contribution as well. So we've had a lot of audience questions and would like to get through as many as we can. So it'd be great if Namali and Derek can join me. Fantastic. So first of all, a question for Derek, and this is from Stephen. How can businesses balance the benefits of AI with concerns about data privacy, storage, and security when employees are hesitant to use AI tools? Big question for you there.
Yes, there's probably two parts to that, actually. I think the first one is, again, I would start with what is the organisation's AI policy. So what are we allowing staff to do? What we're not allowing them to do? What tools can they bring to what they do in their task? What tools do we say no to? So having those safeguards and guardrails really explicit for employees up front, I think, is really important. So even in my own organisation, we have a singular AI tool, and that is Microsoft Copilot. So what we tend to find is that in real life, people are using multiple AI tools, but because of a well-defined structured governance framework in an organisation, they might not be able to bring that to bear in their workforce, but that's fine because it's explicit. So I think there's aspects of that. There's also aspects with AI that you've got to ensure your data set the right way, particularly when it comes to like privileges and access. So again, depends on what your organisation uses, but our one uses SharePoint, for example. So we've got multiple online folders in the cloud. And if we just to plug in Copilot or another AI tool without having the right safeguards in place and the walls in place, it would mean I would be able to go and search for, the chief exec salary or something like that. It's about making sure that HR and private information has the right safeguards around it, so not everyone can access it. So it's basics like that in terms of making sure your data is structured the right way and protected the right way. Now that's just internally. You want to also make sure that happens externally as well. So for example, if you use ChatGPT and a personal account right now, any information you put onto that is helping train the AI in the tool, and that's then open to risk or open to potential. If you're putting an IP or corporate information in there, that can be accessed as well potentially. So whereas if you use the paid for pro account, that's all protected, and that's all just down to you and ChatGPT and stuff like that as well. So again, it's about having that explicit plan. In terms of the second part to that question about maybe reluctance of employees, so, and I think Sarah touched on this, it's share good experiences or share where maybe it's not going so well as well. So where do we help people, not just through training, but we help through just normalization of what people are actually doing on the ground, where it's working, where they've come across challenges. So that's more about confidence building. And the more you share good practice, the more you share transparently when things haven't gone so well, the more it just becomes normalized. And the example I'd give on that is that I kind of half jokingly here, I feel like I built my career on just knowing a bit about Excel. early on in my career, because you're the whiz kid, you can do Excel. It's kind of going to similar with AI. If you're the individual or the group of people who are like, no, we're going to get our head around this and take it on, adopt it and understand it and get comfortable with it, that's going to hold you in good stead as well. So, but it's about increasing that confidence across the organisation. Has been touched on before. Some people will get it straight away, other people will take a bit of time. It's about, as a leaders, as an organisation, how do you bring everyone with you on the journey and understand that that's a different pace for different individuals.
Great, thank you, Derek. Thanks very much. And then for Namali, we've got a question from Bashkar. How can organisations move AI ethics beyond policy documents and embed responsible AI decision-making into management's practice?
So I think, as we discussed earlier, Caroline, investing in internal governance and familiarizing with the regulations, I think, are probably quite important, because with that you can then go beyond ethics, go beyond bias as well. So the EU AI Act, ISO 4200I certification, and all of that helps to get an understanding of the risk categorization taxonomies that should be looked at, specifically if you're using agentic AI and so on, because it is good that we should also then invest in closed environments like Copilot. But within Copilot, if we begin to, let's say, use agentic workflows, some of those agents can then go and access outside that closed environment as well. So controllable models are good, but if you can operate with them, then just go about doing that, because they can be steered onto your application. They are more robust, and more importantly, you can also tend to get them to give the similar answer to similar problems. So one of the difficulties with very general models is that they are very non-deterministic. So the response they give for one situation, again, if you ask it, you might not get the same response. So that is also a problem. So there is also a trend towards why this agentic AI is becoming a good thing, is because the small agents, you can have small models built into agents, and smaller models are more controllable because you distill and make them focus on a particular application. But with that, still the agents bring another problem that it becomes very difficult to keep track of.
Great.
But in general, I think you need to ask a lot of questions right from the start about what are the decisions being made here, and take an inventory of all the applications and what AI is being used in each of those systems is very important, so that you are aware. Even if you're using third-party tools, if there is some AI, you need to be aware of it, and establish what data it's accessing, what tools it's calling, and all those questions. A lot of questions need to be asked before you simply use these systems.
Thanks very much, Namali. And for Sarah, a question from Olawasei. How is AI in change management context enhancing or reducing empathy or emotional responses to change?
I think, I don't know if this is answering the question correctly. In terms of what I feel about AI, however many months, nearly a year sort of into my sort of embracing of it, is the outputs that we're getting is really, it's just so obviously AI generated. Like, we're losing the humanness of things. So, and certainly in my field, there's a lot of business plans, a lot of documents that have go around, and I think people who are looking at CVs, people who are looking at learning and development or training plans, you just take one look at them and just go, oh, it's been AI generated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And depending on the seriousness of what you've applied for, it sort of makes it look like you just haven't cared right? And that's not what was meant. When you submit a business plan that has used AI, when you receive a CV that has been made by AI, it's not ever the person's intention to do that. But there's no getting away from the fact that it's just, I think it's going to make us a bit numb to some of the areas of our life. It's a bit. I give an example. I got an email from somebody who was praising me for something I'd done, right? And it was so AI generated. It was unbelievable, right? I don't know if it was Copilot, ChatGPT, I don't know what used it, right? But it was so obvious, and it was the most unauthentic. I laughed it off because it was just a classic example of how we've lost our sort of humanness in this. And then, I suppose, and then you're mentioning sort of empathy in the question. I think we can't underestimate how our own insights add to documents, and we're not capturing that human empathy anymore as well as we did before. And I think it'll come back. I think humans are going to win this. I think AI are going to be tools that maximise the very good things that we do in our jobs, and we just need the legislation and the governance to restrict the AI doing bad things in our jobs.
Thank you, Sarah. That's really insightful. And Derek, maybe you can answer this one. We've got a question from John. Is there a risk younger generations rely too much on AI?
Short answer is yes, absolutely. There's a risk. There's a risk that older people could end up relying on it too much as well. So, yeah, it just depends, I suppose, how things go. I'm not going to make any wild predictions on what that might look like, but I do think of things in terms of very basic. The calculator, don't know when that was invented, but we do sums on calculators these days. We do things on Excel or other kind of tools like that as well. So humanity does adopt to new things and new tools to do things that it doesn't always need kind of mental arithmetic or anything involved. So I see AI as a much more complex version of that. The same way that we think of younger people or the generation as being digital natives. So they kind of grew up with the iPads and technology around them since birth, putting, even in a bad way, putting tablets in front of 3-year-olds and asking me to watch YouTube hours, and then, well, parents can go and relax for a little bit of time and stuff like that, which I am guilty of, I'll be honest. But I think it's about saying, well, if they're comfortable with technology, they'll embrace it more. So right now, we do have a little bit of the Wild West when it comes to AI, because we've got a number of tools, relatively cheap, depending what you're using, how often you're using it in terms of the tokens. So you will have a lot of experimentation right now, but it goes back to something Sarah just touched on there. I think there will be a human and governance reaction to that Wild West, that there will have to be. And it will come down to, where do we value humans and where do we value AI? And it might be, there was a podcast I listened to a few weeks ago, it might be the case as us as humans, we're the premium service in the future. If you want to take the value of what does a human on human interaction mean, and whether that's the genuine empathy, the authenticity that brings, whether that's the critical thinking and understanding, all those kind of softer skills that humans have that AI quite frankly doesn't have, certainly not at this moment in time, that will become more and more valuable over time. And I would say that we'll let AI do the repetitive and the basic and all the rest of it as well that it possibly can, and let humans be more like humans. And as I say, I think we'll go up the value chain and what we can bring to do things, building rapport. I mean, AI is not going to be able to do that as much as these AI voice agents and stuff are becoming really, really sophisticated. If you are aware that you're dealing with a human, there's that kind of rapport building that goes on, and people value people at the end of the day. So I think there's a long way to go in that, but that's kind of where I would say at this moment in time, I sit on that one.
Thanks very much, Derek. And so I'm just going to skip to one final question. That's a question from Louise. Is there a danger that as leaders, we rely more on AI than our own thinking, and colleagues are losing confidence in us? How would organisations address this? And that, well, Sarah, would you like to answer that one?
Yeah, I can try. Leadership, I suppose, by its very nature of what it is about leading and setting direction. So, and I I feel for the leaders because there isn't any real, we don't know what that vision holds. Like normally as a leader, we're going for the gold standard. And that's what a good organisation will want to go for, the gold standard. And that could be an ISO accreditation, it could be a CMI qualification, it could be whatever it is within the industry. And once they've hit those bullet points, they've hit all the marks, they get the gold standard and they've got the accreditation. With this, we don't have that yet. So all I can go off to answer this question, I think, is we don't have there's nothing practically we can do. All we can do is try to just keep up and just be honest and open and share best practice and do things like this, where you're trying to share human intelligence, really, as to how we cope with this massive beast of AI intelligence. But so if they can't lead on a practical level, I think leaders need to lead on an ethical basis, and put their hands up and say we don't know where this is going, and we can't actually we really can't see the future for our little business part of the world that we are in. I don't know what it means for me as an individual. So we all, not just the leaders, I think all have to look at our part and our use of AI and think just a bit deeper, maybe a couple of steps, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps down the line, as to what is this a good use of AI? Because the way I see it, the world that we have now is what the last 75 years or so of industry as it is, right? And that was all humans that made the world that we have today. If we all do the same as what we're doing today and we just become faster at it and quicker, the world, if everybody's happy with the way the world is right now and we can do it 5, 10 times faster, great. AI will help us. But if we don't change, it's going to absolutely crash the society and the environment and all the things that we are seeing and feeling in the world right now. AI is just going to accelerate it. We have to be the ones that choose what we accelerate, and governments have to, I think, are probably the only ones that can put the legislation in to say what we can't. And again, so we do good things, but try and decelerate the bad things.
Thanks very much, Sarah. Thank you. Okay, so one final question for each of you, just very quickly. What are the key things that you'll be focusing on over the next 12 months? And Namali, would you like to start us off with that? So what will you be focusing on? Thank you.
Yeah, so we're currently working on a EU large-scale project on healthcare. So basically looking at AI tools for young adult cancer survivors, including the creation of risk prediction models in conjunction with cardiovascular disease likelihood, because after treatment, they are 22% or so higher chance of getting cardiovascular problems. So we are using we're actually using a smart mirror with a little bit of not ChatGPT, but LLM, local LLM, but also predictive models from biomarkers and so on. So whilst working on this, I think the area that I will need to improve a lot with my team is how to better manage the memory. And another area that is not quite properly resolved yet is how can we continuously learn? Because as people, the risks change. Just for example, when you're predicting risk for cardiovascular, it changes. So how do you continuously learn those changes and adapt those models with the patient? I think those are still areas that are yet to be solved. But outside of my work, I think in AI, a big push is there for physical intelligence as we move to embodied robots. So I think increasingly we are going to see more of that.
Brilliant, thank you. And Derek, what about you?
Yeah, our focus will be on supporting Scottish companies to make sure they're using AI to accelerate and exaggerate and make the best use of their domain knowledge, expertise, what they're really, really good at, and what can AI help scale that from. And beyond that as well, we're looking to help companies move up that maturity scale. So not just kind of starting off with initial pilots and how you initially start using the AI, but actually how do you do that on an enterprise-wide basis as well to really scale that across the business to realise all the benefits that we possibly can through that for the economy.
Thank you. And Sarah, finally, from you.
I have been loving using all the AI tools, so I'll continue testing everything and anything that comes onto the market and be the guinea pig that uses them. And I'll be supporting my colleagues, within my employment, just getting others to use the tools in a safe way, and to how to retain the knowledge without losing our skills is the key one for me. And I think I'll keep championing the human element of AI. We have to keep being human in this. We have to keep that at the forefront of this. I think it's the only way it will survive for us all.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Thank you to my brilliant panelists for sharing your time and expertise. Derek McCamley, Namali Wiratunga, and Sarah Frame. Thank you very much. We've covered a lot of themes there around AI change management, and hopefully addressed some of your questions and tried to reinforce our roles as managers through AI transformation as confident, responsible, and people-centered leaders. We'll try to follow up with more questions because I know there have been a lot, but back over to you now, Amelia. Thank you.
And that is it for today's session. Thank you to our hosts, Caroline and Renee, and to our speakers, Derek, Namali, and Sarah, for your insight and expertise. Stay tuned to hear more about CMI membership, and thank you once again for joining us.
Don't forget, as a CMI member, you can find the latest management and leadership insights at managers.org.uk. If you're not yet a member, join our community to discover CMI Confidence with on-demand resources, our network of mentors, and industry-leading accreditations.